Welcome to Education Today. I'm Maddie Ritchie, a senior from Armstrong Junior High School in the Armstrong School District. In today's episode, we will be talking about the Armstrong High School wrestling team. To start today's show, we have two very special guests with us. Welcome to Education Today. Will you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do in the school?
I'm Chris Rivera.
I'm Isaac Robb.
I really have no role in the school but to be a student and try and get through.
I'm the president of the SCA club.
Okay. So what is your position in the Armstrong High School wrestling program?
My position is second string 113.
I'm the starting 160-pound wrestler.
Okay. How long have you been involved in the Armstrong High School's wrestling program?
This is only my third year wrestling. I started my sophomore year.
I've been wrestling since the school began, and altogether I've been wrestling for about 12 years.
So for people that don't really know anything about wrestling, is there a way that you can dumb it down and explain it for us?
Wrestling is not for the faint-hearted.
So there's two guys, maybe girls, not many girls in the sport, line up across from each other to start. And there's 3 periods. Each period, at the end of the first period, one wrestler gets a choice, top, bottom, or neutral. Bottom is whenever you're on your hands and knees. Top is when you're on top of the guy with the hands and knees, and neutral is when you're back on your feet. And second period ends, third period starts the same way. Each period is 2 minutes long in high school, and in college it's first period's 3 minutes and the rest are 2.
Okay. Was there anything in particular that got you both started in it, like family or friends or anything?
Whenever I quit basketball my freshman year, I took a year off of a winter sport. Isaac has been trying to get me to wrestle since I was in junior high, so I finally gave in, and that's honestly the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wrestling's been in my family for generations. My great-grandfather is actually in the Pennsylvania Wrestling Hall of Fame for
cool.
coaching and wrestling. So I just got to keep the tradition going and keep wrestling, and hopefully whenever I have kids, they'll keep wrestling.
What sort of conditioning do you do, and what's your least favorite of all the conditioning that you do?
Conditioning can vary. Sometimes coach will have us run sprints for the short run, but he mostly drills us for long periods, for instance overtimes or double overtimes.
My least favorite is what we call the tower. It's stairs, 3 flights of stairs that we run. One set is 10 laps up and down. We do buddy carries up it. Sometimes we do zombie crawls, which are like army crawls, but you don't use your legs or hips. You just pull yourself with your arms. We can bear crawl up it. It's a fun time. And we run things called a 6 under 6, where you run down a hallway, upstairs, then down another hallway, downstairs 6 times. And you have to reach that 6 laps in under 6 minutes.
Unlike Isaac here, my least favorite thing to do is in the wrestling room. We call it the short wall. On the short walls, we do sprints, we do things called bear baby sprints, all in one go. Or sometimes he'll just have us do halfway across the mat, back, and the whole way across the mat. I do not have short distance in me at all, whatsoever.
So you guys still condition off season, right?
We do. There's a camp that Mr. Knoll funds with our boosters called Camp Bruno. Camp Bruno is where a group of people will go up with a bunch of other people, and it's just like I guess a sleepaway camp for wrestlers. You wake up, you wrestle. That's your entire day, and that's about it.
There was a group of us this summer with our old assistant coach who's retired now. We went boxing with him, and to help us keep in shape, get us more stronger. It was a lot of fun.
That sounds cool. For a typical practice, what would you say to people that don't go to them, what it would be like?
You have to come into practice mentally prepared. Unlike most sports, you know what you're doing. You know you're going to run through plays. You know you're just going to do your typical day-to-day thing. But in wrestling, it can really vary. If coach wants to run bottom one day, you're going to do bottom. If coach wants to do top, you're going to do top. Or if coach just wants to run you live the entire match, the entire practice, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
Some practices, he teaches us new moves, so we run through those. Other practices, we do drills of moves we already know, but at a higher pace, faster. So like we blow out our lungs and we do sprints. We wrestle a lot alive.
So at practice, do you guys do like a lot of the same drills that you do, like conditioning?
Yeah, mostly.
Okay. So what's your favorite memory or part of wrestling that you've experienced so far?
My favorite memory of wrestling is always waking up early in the mornings, 4:30, get here to school by 5:30 to live with Noel.
Oh, that's my least favorite memory. My favorite memory was last year. We're at our playoff match. I knew it was going to come down to me. Of course, it came down to me. All I had to do was win. My match went into overtime, and if I took the kid down, I would win. I would take the kid down, and we won our first playoff match in Armstrong history.
So you said that you guys like all meet up in the morning and lift?
Yes.
Yeah? Are you
Small group.
all a part of the lifting team as well?
I'm part of the lifting team. I don't know if any of them are part of the lifting team that I'm aware of, but
Small group goes and lifts in the morning. I used to do, but I'm not waking up.
probably
at 5.
about like what? There's Josh,
There's like
Augie,
8.
Garrett, Brendan Reyes, and me, Lucas Kalinsky. So yeah, a very small group of us go.
Too early for me.
So, like, what would you say is the hardest or most overlooked part of wrestling?
The most overlooked thing for wrestling, like from what I see, is most people think it's easy when it's really not easy. Wrestling is not for the faint-of-hearted. If you're a soft person, this is not the sport for you. This sport is it's a dog fight pretty much. Unlike most sports, it is just one-on-one, you and the other person. You don't have a team helping you. It's just you and the other person on the mat. So it's just like
It's a mental game.
it's a mental game.
I think the most overlooked part is no one realizes how close the wrestling team is, because we all suffer together through practices. Practices are pretty rough,
Yeah.
so we all just have to rely on each other to pick ourselves up. So we're all just really close. We're like a family. I've gained a lot of really close friends from wrestling throughout the years.
For like a typical tournament day or like a match, how would you describe it?
So I usually pack my bag the night before, get all my warm-up singlets, headgear, a towel to shower, my shoes, and leave that packed the night before so I'm ready. And then I wake up early in the morning for a tournament day, grab it, get my car, meet at the school. We get to the school and we weigh in. And tournaments are usually just a lot of sitting and waiting. And whenever you do wrestle, it's 6 minutes of terrible, hard, just full-out sprinting for 6 minutes. But it's a lot of fun.
Could you like explain a little bit more about how the weight thing works in wrestling?
So I just want to get something out of the way here. A common misconception about wrestlers is we do not starve ourselves. What the weight thing really comes down to is what you eat, what your typical diet is. If your diet is terrible, then you will have some overweight wrestlers who do struggle with their weight. I know for me, I wrestle 113, but I can go down to 106 because typically I was weighing around 107.3. So if coach wanted me to, I could drop down to 106, but I don't have that problem because I drink a lot of water and watch what I eat.
Some kids don't do it the right way. They eat like junk, like sweets, the night before a match, and then they come in overweight the day of a match, so they have to run and lose that weight. But it's not that hard
Yeah,
to
well,
keep your weight. managed.
Weight's very important for wrestling
Right.
too. So I wrestle 113. If I come 0.3 ounces over, I cannot wrestle because it doesn't sound like much, but like that weight difference, like 0.3 ounces is not that much. But if a kid comes in a pound over, like 114 and tries to wrestle 113, you can't do that because you will feel a weight difference when he has you on the mat. So
Every little bit counts.
every little bit counts.
Some kids I've seen cut their underwear to make weight with their teeth.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So my last question is, for this year, what are you guys both excited about?
it to be over.
Yeah, no,
But-
I'm actually excited to see our one kid from Apollo Ridge wrestle, Logan Harmon. He's very good at wrestling. He manhandles everybody. I've seen him wrestle. It's actually quite scary, not gonna lie.
I'm most excited just to finish the year out, hopefully finish it out strong. I want it to be over, but I know I'm going to miss it whenever it is over.
Right.
I won't know what to do with myself after we finish
Yeah.
high school.
400 pounds in a couple of years.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Isaac and Chris. We're going back to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Armstrong School District's Education Today.
The brain is a remarkable organ. It's almost infinite in its capacity. Its ability to reach its full potential is limited by only one thing: the heart. For if the heart isn't fully engaged in what you're doing, if you have no drive, no passion, the brain will simply go through the motions. Find your success at Indiana University of Pennsylvania.
All your professors, all of them, they know that all it takes is one dreamer with passion, one person, and they hope in each of you that you might be that one who makes a longer lasting light bulb, who writes music for the ages, who reaches into the mind and discovers a new star, and who can change the world of a fifth grader. We're gathered here to hope in you.
We're back now with teacher Mr. Brandon Knoll from Armstrong High School. Welcome to Education Today, Mr. Knoll. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I teach GeoCivics 7 here at the junior-senior high school, and I'm involved with the wrestling program here at the high school. I'm the head wrestling coach for the wrestling program.
What is your position of involvement in Armstrong High School wrestling program?
Well, I'm the head coach for the varsity program. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into the program itself. It's not just the varsity program. There's a junior high level, and there's a level for the little kids too. So there's a lot to do with it, but I have a lot of help, so that's very helpful.
How long have you been involved in the Armstrong High School's wrestling program?
9 years.
Did you yourself wrestle earlier in your life?
Yeah, it's pretty much all I did in my early life. I started when I was 4 years old. That was my first match, and that's what I've done through my young adult life, through college. When I graduated college, I wrestled in college, and then from then on graduated and went on to coach at the collegiate level, and then came back home to coach at the high school level.
Around when did you start coaching?
Like I said, pretty much right out of college. I went from college to the University of Buffalo, where I coached collegiately. That was pretty much my first experience with coaching as far as a position. And then I went on from there, came back into the high school realm.
For wrestling practice, how do you normally run it?
You know, every practice is different. It depends on needs. It depends on technique needs. But pretty much every day we have an aspect of technique, conditioning, and then live wrestling, which is basically a simulation of a match that the guys are going to have to go through when they wrestle competitions.
So who else is involved in the management aspect of it other than yourself?
Our assistant coach at the varsity level is Gary Zern. As I mentioned, there are several levels to our program. At the junior high level, Mr. Brent Ingram helps out a lot. Dr. Hepner, Mr. Dave Zablocki helps out a lot. And then at the junior level, we have several coaches that help there too.
What in your opinion, is the hardest part of the sport?
I think it's the fact that you're out there all by yourself. You're all alone. You can't kind of get your mistakes picked up by a teammate. You're out there all alone, and you kind of have to deal with that.
What kind of impact do you think wrestling has had on the members of the team?
We always talk about family being our kind of identity, and I think that does make an impact on our guys, our team. We talk about certain building character traits like discipline and perseverance and things that they're going to have to use later in life, not just for wrestling, but for later in a career or for building a family, things like that.
So earlier in the show, our guests were talking about the Camp Bruno. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Camp Bruno is a very special thing to me personally because Bruno was a kid that I went to college with, and the year before his senior year of college, he was tragically killed in a car accident. And we run a nonprofit camp where we do a camp in the summer for wrestling, and all the profits go to kids that are going to go to college to wrestle. And as of this last year, we've given away $30,000 to kids that are going to college to wrestle.
Wow.
So we always take the kids from Armstrong, from our program, we take them. That's our summer camp that we go to as a team, as a family.
In your opinion, how do you think wrestling impacts the youth?
I think, like I mentioned before, I think the character building traits are the most important things for the youth. Things like discipline, things like personal discipline and personal respect, the things that they're going to have to do on their own. There are certain aspects that they have to do, like making weight and being there for teammates and things like that. So I think those are the really important things for the youth.
So this year at Camp Bruno, what did you guys do?
Just a lot of wrestling, a lot of technique, a lot of team building. Got to spend a lot of time together. Different time than we have during the year. I mean, obviously during the year you're pretty structured and regimented, and so you have your practices, you have your competitions, you have your tournaments, but you don't have a lot of time other than that. And when you go to camp, you're there overnight and you're there for a whole week, so you've got other time to kind of team build and kind of just spend some time together. And I think it's just good for the team. It brings the team closer together, that's for sure.
Are they all required to go then?
No, it's totally optional, but it's kind of grown to the point where I have to kind of limit it because it's grown to the point where people want to go so bad. I have to limit the number because we can't take so many people.
What do you think about this year's team?
I think we have a pretty good team this year. I think we have a chance to do something pretty special. I think we have a chance to make the playoffs, and I think that if we wrestle well, that we've grown and we've matured, and that we're ready to be a playoff team.
And what have you noticed any changes since past years?
I would say the maturation. Obviously, over the years, physical maturation, obviously, but mental maturation as well. Just with the growth of technique and the growth of just being more mature on the mat, knowing when to do things, when not to do things, better decision making, things like that.
Right. What personally is your favorite memory from coaching wrestling?
Oh, that's one of the hardest questions I think I've ever had to answer. There's just so many. Wrestling, I've heard wrestling talked about as funerals and weddings, because one moment you're on top of the world when someone wins a really close match, and then the next moment you're on the bottom side when someone loses a really close match. So those moments when you win that match that you weren't supposed to, when someone really does something that you've been practicing and you've been working really hard at, those are my favorite moments.
Right. So when you were growing up, was there anything that led to you being a wrestler?
My dad was real into wrestling. When he was younger, he kind of started the high school program with some friends where I grew up. So I think that was definitely a part of it. And my older brother is 4 years older than me, so when he was starting to wrestle, I kind of just wanted to follow what he was doing,
Right.
So follow the big brother. So I think that was a big part in my wrestling.
At what age did you start again?
I started when I was 4. My
4?
first match I was 4, yeah. So, but it was in my town. It was kind of like, there was really only 2 things you did. You only did football or you wrestled, and so those were the 2 things that we did. So that's what I chose.
How far did you go, in wrestling?
Well, in high school I was a state place winner twice, and then in college I won a national title for college.
How would you say the transition of the two schools affected the team?
Well, the transition at first was a little rough on us because Ford City didn't have wrestling. So we didn't get that initial rush that maybe some other sports got from, hey, you have two teams coming together. We really didn't have two teams coming together, so we kind of had to recruit from, some from Ford City kids, and it's helping now that we do have some members from Ford City. But initially it was basically the Katanning team coming into a larger designation for wrestling, and that can be difficult. But
Right.
We worked really hard and persevered, and actually we got a state champion out of it. Jacob Robb won a state title for us in our first year as Armstrong High School.
How far has the team gone in previous years, other than Jacob Robb?
Right. The team is a little different than the individuals. The team, we've gotten into the playoffs, into the WIUP playoffs. We've gotten into the second round and then lost in the second round. So that's as far as we've gotten right now. Hoping to get a little bit further than that, but that's as far as we've gotten so far.
So earlier in the show, we were talking to our guests about conditioning. What is it like in your perspective?
Well, it's kind of difficult because from my perspective, I've done the sport at the highest level, so conditioning at the college level is a lot different than it is at the high school level. So when I look at it, I'm like, this isn't that hard. But for the high school guys, I'm sure it's not fun. I'm sure they're not really excited about it. However, I will say this. Whenever we wrestle, whenever we compete, we're definitely one of the best in-shape teams on the mat. And a lot of times we'll end up winning matches simply because we're in better shape, not because we're the better wrestler that day. We'll win because we just can go longer. And that's really kind of why we push conditioning so much.
At what point is the team at this season?
We just kind of started. December is when we can really start the season. It's when our kickoff is. So we really only have about a month in right now. So we're really kind of early in the season. Still getting through some tournaments and things like that. And we're just starting to get into our section dual meet schedule, where we're wrestling teams that are in our section and basically our conference, I guess you could say.
Back on the topic of conditioning, what's your favorite condition to run or drill?
I just prefer drilling, high-level drilling. Like, we have what we call a core drill. It's what we do on a regular basis because obviously adults learn from repetition. And wrestling is one of those things that it can just tire out so many muscles at once. So I prefer to do a lot more wrestling. And then in between the wrestling, I like to do maybe some sprints or something, then right back to the wrestling to just make them as tired as possible, because I want them to be able to get to the point where they're super tired in practice, so that if they ever feel that feeling in a match, that they're going to say to themselves, I'm okay because I've felt this before and it's not that bad.
Right. So how is this program different than other programs?
I would say the whole family aspect. We're definitely different when we go to tournaments and things like that. Our guys are, I would say, more respectful. I would say the team is tighter. They're definitely a little different than some of the other teams. Some of the other teams might be a little disrespectful, and because it's an emotional sport, so it can happen where you can let your emotions get the best of you. But our guys do a really good job of keeping that in check and keeping our kind of identity of family and being disciplined. They keep that in check. They do a really good job of that.
Well, that's our show for today. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Our thanks goes out to the TV production students of Katanning High School, led by their teacher, Mr. Don Swanson. They were our film crew today. Please join us again next week for another look at the Armstrong School District. DVD copies of this and all Education Today programming can be requested by contacting Chris Garatano, multimedia technician at Armstrong Junior Senior High School. Visit our website for updated information about the district, and have a great week.